Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about complex PTSD. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you weren't expecting the complex part in front of the PTSD, but if you really think about it, it should be there. So that's the reason why I have Penny here on my show who brought up this great topic and who's going to help us think about this in another way. So thank you so much, Penny, for coming on my show. Let's go ahead and dive right in because I really want to know when you hear the words complex PTSD, what does that make you think about?
It's interesting because when I first heard the words complex PTSD, I kind of panicked because it was in the form of a diagnosis for myself. Okay. And I had this stigma in my head of what PTSD was. And it was that it was military veterans only, or school shooting victims, that it was someone who is maybe a loose cannon, and so wrong. Yeah. And so I'm a big person into researching and reading and learning about things. Okay. And so I really dove into it and said, okay, what does this mean? And how does this relate to me? And so for me, the interesting part to learn about it was that, trauma isn't what the general public necessarily defines it as. Absolutely. There's big trauma and little trauma, and some combination of all of those or any of those can lead to complex PTSD, because there's trauma where something traumatized me. I had a car accident. Yeah. Then there's PTSD where you meet the criteria. And there are 3 criteria that are: you feel a sense of threat, that you avoid something, and you re-experience it. Now, all of those apply to complex PTSD, but you add on top of that interpersonal disturbances, negative self-concept, and affect dysregulation. And so it's almost like you have this tiered diagnosis that starts at basic trauma and becomes a lot more complex, hence the name. And so for me, what I think today versus what I thought 2 years ago when I heard that is very, very different. And one of the things I'm really trying to do is get that word out there so that people don't panic, and that they maybe embrace it and don't stigmatize it or see it as a flaw of them.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I love that last part, not to see it as a flaw. Goodness gracious, if there's anything more to be said in the next 20 minutes, this is the bombshell, because let's be honest, that right there holds a thousand people already, because goodness, people don't think about it like that. They hold it, they carry it, and they wear it as if it's their clothing, and they wear it proudly sometimes, depending on the person. Not everybody, but depending on the person, they do. I mean, you and I can say that we have met people that are like, okay, that's weird, I wouldn't do that, but sure, you know what I mean? But it's like when you are healing, because it's continuous. Yes. It's nice to recognize the traumas, because it's like you said, and I've spoken to other trauma coaches and trauma healing individuals, and spoken to this one lady who talked about there's 10 types of traumas. And when she talked about those 10 types of traumas, I was just basically like, nobody's exempt from facing trauma. And when you were going through the categories to identify your complex PTSD, I was just like, well, I'll be darned. You know what I mean? Because that has a really big impact. But I wanted to go back because you said, when you were talking about the 3, you said one that I kind of missed. It was the affect. What was that second word?
Affect dysregulation.
What is that?
It's a hard time managing your emotions and how they show. Oh. So one of the big things that a lot of people with trauma do is dissociate and disconnect. Okay. And so you could be in a situation where your affect or how you present yourself is really not connected properly to the environment. So it can be a matter of you overreact. More often, it's under. It's like you put up this defensive armor and you mask yourself. And I really like that term, because it's like you don't want people to see you.
Yeah,
So
but
you
that's a
put a mask.
protection. Yeah, it's protecting yourself because you feel vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I can say I've done that multiple times. This association is not nothing new to me. You know what I mean? It's because
Yeah.
it is something that you feel like it protects you. And I
Yes.
think once we realize that there's a different ways to protect ourselves, then we can handle that disassociation in a different form. And that's something that I'm learning. I mean, for you, what are some steps that you are learning now that you have recognized that you have your complex PTSD as a diagnosis? Like, what are some steps that you're doing to heal yourself through through your trauma?
Well, I think the biggest thing is learning to ground myself.
Mm.
I consciously focus on my breathing. I consciously remind myself to put my feet flat on the floor, to not clench my jaw. When you really try to hold something in, you literally clench your jaw so you don't say something, and it can, it's a definite first sign that I'm starting to react to something. Yeah, I think one of the other things that I really try to do is also I try to consider other perspectives and remind myself that my reaction is based on my experiences.
Yeah.
Because it's easy sometimes for someone with trauma to project blame.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes projecting blame is correct and accurate, but to understand the perspective of it can be very different. And I think one of the big things that I learned is I went to a retreat in England and learned about intergenerational trauma. And a lot
Mm.
of my trauma was family related, which is relatable for many people. And for me, it would be very easy to get angry at family members for their behaviors. But when
Yeah.
you look at it and you recognize things happen generation after generation after generation, and you don't know anything better or different.
Yeah.
That is, I think, one of the things that I have to remind myself is, are they even aware that they're doing something that triggers me? What triggers or activates me, whichever word you prefer, is
Yeah.
that's on me,
Yeah.
how I respond to it. And a lot of people don't think about the fact too that one of the favorite things I've seen lately is trauma isn't always a memory, it's a reaction. And so I remind myself, because there's things I do and don't remember from my childhood, but how I react, being aware of that, being aware of my bodily sensations. I had gone very numb for decades and I could feel for other people, but I couldn't feel necessarily for myself. Because I wouldn't let myself. And so reminding me of all of those things helps me to be aware and to respond and react in a way that's more appropriate to the situation.
Yeah, I like that. It's basically taking that moment of that power of pause, just pausing in the moment, taking a second to rationalize, having that 360 perspective, realizing that this is a world, you're in it, you're feeling it, you're embracing it, but doesn't mean that you have to react to every single thing. You most definitely ground yourself. That's so valid. And I wish more people would understand that, because sometimes I argue with my husband because he's like, that triggers me. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know that triggers you? We're having a random conversation about something, and then all of a sudden you're mad or upset. And like, how am I supposed to know that? I don't know that.
We
You
don't
know what
read
I mean?
minds.
And exactly, like, I don't read mine, and I can't just sit in your mind and just watch the movies of your memories. Like, if we could do that, it would be terrifying and beautiful all at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
Terrifying and beautiful. But it's just something that we don't realize. Like, we are literally all living our worlds differently and all reacting differently. And one thing that I'm loving from this new generation that they're speaking out on is our emotions are valid, but our reactions are not valid. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So how you react to your emotions, that's something that you really have to take accountability for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's something that you really have to honor yourself, know your boundaries, and start and get closer to you. Because what you said earlier about how you would get close to people, how you love on people, understand people, read people, but when it comes to yourself, there was a complete gone. There was nothing there because you basically disassociated yourself enough where it's like there's this gap. You know what I mean? There's
Yep.
gap between you, your inner self, and who you are now. And it's like, where is it? And then you look down, and it's like, oh, well, it's a canyon now. I ain't going over there. You know what I mean? But it's like, no, you need to start working on it and build that bridge to bring you back to who you are. And that starts with that self-love, that self-healing and recognizing and giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. Oh my goodness. How many times have you had to be like, Penny, it's okay.
Oh, yes. I love my 90-second pauses. And, one thing I would add to what you just said too is self respect.
Absolutely.
I think that that's really important. And I think respecting of others because, we can all be through the same experience. And it
Yeah,
may be traumatic to some, but not to others. Some of
absolutely.
us may be ready to accept it was traumatic, and others may not be there. And then
Hmm.
you may have others who are like, "Ooh, I like being a victim."
Hmm.
And so, recognizing that we all, we take it in differently.
Yeah.
And a lot depends on our ages. I mean, I lost my dad when I was 9. My sister was 13. My brother was 15. We were at different developmental phases. Our brains were
Yeah.
development, matured at different levels. And
Yeah.
so how we each responded to it was also influenced by that piece of it.
Absolutely. That's such a valid point. And I think people forget about that, how we may experience life together, but it's all subjective at the end of the day because it goes back to, like you said, some handle things differently. We have all these like these little categories in our minds where we place things, where we determine if it's tolerable or if it's not, or you know what I mean, where it's gonna go. So with that being said, it just shows that it's not all the same. That's why I love to say common sense is not common because life is subjective. Because even
Yes.
if you're exposed to the same environment, you're not going to be exposed to the same understanding. You know what I mean? Because people who lived in New York back then and dealt with the Great Depression and people who live in New York now are not going to have the same understanding
Yeah.
of the way of living life. You know what I mean? It's going to be two different perspectives. So it's just like I wish people can see that because man, it's so interesting. So what would you tell your younger self if you could tell your younger self anything?
Oh, I think I would tell myself to not forget to play and to, you don't have to grow up at 9. My family used to joke, oh my God, it was like she became 30, and don't do that. Um, you know,
Right?
it's
Don't
so
do
hard to
that.
get back in touch with that little girl and that sense of wonder, because to me, I
Absolutely.
locked her up in a room and left her there to keep her innocent and naive. And, and I wish that I had more consistently brought her out to have fun. And I'm
Yeah.
learning to do that again. That's probably one of the hardest things for me is I've always been so serious, so academic, so I want to understand everything, but I don't
Yeah.
always want to feel everything. In fact, I don't want to feel a lot. And yet as
Yeah.
kids, we want to feel it all. And so
Yes.
that is definitely one of the things that I would shout off the rooftops to myself as a little kid is just remember to play and have fun and to feel all the feels.
Yes, that's one thing I'm learning and I'm teaching myself now is to just take a moment when I'm having that pause, that break, to remind myself I am thankful for the emotions that I'm feeling. I'm thankful for all of the emotions, even the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. I'm thankful for the anger, everything, because it is a blessing to feel. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's people out there who are literally born with the incapability to feel emotions. Very rare disorders, very
Yeah.
rare, but it is there and it's sad. You
It
know what I mean?
is.
Because they don't ever actually get to feel joy or they won't ever have to feel anger. I mean, and
Mhm.
somebody told me that they help you with boundaries. They help you understand yourself. They help you achieve things that just regular intellectual intelligence won't be able to get you. You know what I mean? So
It
it's just
gives you perspective,
it
you know?
does.
If
It
you
really
never
does.
feel sad, how do you recognize joy?
Right? Exactly. How could that's why I tell my nieces that's like you have to understand boredom. So when you have something exciting and actually something to enjoy, you can actually bask into it and enjoy it
Yep.
versus just being like, meh, on to the next thing. Like, no, get bored, do something, read a, look at the ceiling. You know how many times I had to look at the ceiling to be bored? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Anyways, we're getting off topic. I'm sorry. But that is so true because I think that's one thing I wish I would. If I could, I would have brought my younger self with me and I wouldn't have done exactly like you said, lock her up and just be like, stay right here. I'll come back when it's ready. But I never came back. I never came
Yeah.
back.
And I'm
You know what I
finding my way
mean?
back now, which is actually really a lot of fun. And I'm
It
finding
is.
ways that, like we started taking care of a feral fat cat colony. And some of them are fat cats. That was a faux pas, but it fits. Um,
How
and
cute.
it's funny because I realize how much joy they give me. Now I have my
Yeah.
own cats in the house, but having somebody depend on me and come back and just give me joy is something that I hadn't felt in a long time, and it's something that I really love. So
Yeah.
to me, finding something that will give you that joy as an adult. Now I'm not going to necessarily go sit and play Barbie dolls like I did as a little kid, but
Right.
I can have fun, I can have joy,
Exactly.
and bring out the aspects of that child part of me that I'd locked up, and she needs to come out whether she wants to or not.
Exactly. And I think now that I have kids, I think that has been helping me bring back my child because my child, all he wants to do is just when it's puddles, is just be in it. And it's just like one day I asked myself, what would happen if if he got wet and if he got dirty? And we're like, well, I'll just change his clothes. And we're like, okay, so what would happen if you go in there? And I'm like, looked at myself like, but I don't want to get wet or dirty. I don't even want to get cold. The concept. And I'm like, yeah, but your inner child needs it. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do it for my child, my inner child, and I'm gonna do it for my actual son who needs to see that it's okay to have fun and play.
Yeah.
So I did it and it was actually kind of cool. It was a nice little thing. And but it's just like it made me realize like it's time to bring them out. So having this conversation is nice because I think it's just a good reminder for everyone. Like bring your inner child out, get them out of the room. Don't lock your inner child away anymore. Remove the Grand Canyon, bring it closer.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Time is catching up to us. What could be some lasting words to help us keep on thinking?
I think the big thing for me with complex PTSD is it doesn't have to make every experience in life bad. Bad things happen to us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, oh my gosh, it's a great thing that I experienced whatever, the person with trauma has, but it's a matter of maybe reframe things and to be able to look back at it and say, all right, something bad happened to me, but I'm going to make something good out of it.
Yes.
And that's really the big thing. And it takes work. It is not easy work to get to the point where you can say that. And you can't always say that. There are horrific abuses that people go through.
Yeah.
But if you do the work and are able to pull yourself together enough to say, I survived that. Now, what can I do? What can I offer to others? I think with the right care, whether it be a coach or a therapist or even just a best friend who will validate you and listen, I think that we can usually find something that came out of it that makes us a better person.
Yeah.
And I think people need to really try to focus on that.
Yeah. I think that's very valid because it does take time and you got to work out the tweaks. And when you were saying that, you know what I thought of instantly, what I thought of was just someone learning how to cook. When you learn how to cook, you have the materials, but you don't know exactly what you're doing. And that's basically what it is. You have the materials out there, but you don't know what to do with them. So then what do you reference? A cookbook. What do you reference? A friend. What do you reference? You know what I mean? A coach. What do you reference? Whatever that's there to help you, right? So then
Yeah.
you reference it and you go along. And at first, it's a little messy. Sometimes the cake doesn't come out right or doesn't taste all
Yeah.
right, but that's okay. Then you try again and you try again and you get to the perfection of masterpieces that you didn't even realize was capable to come from you. And that is the beauty of healing and just reminding yourself that and being gentle and just having that compassion. And when you work on yourself, it can do so much for you and not even just for you because now that you change yourself you now affect everybody else who's in your life. So
Exactly.
your coworkers are now affected, your children are affected. The mailman that you say hello to is now affected because now you're saying hello to him. And you know what
Yep.
I mean? You're being more, you're willing to serve. And then that's puts you back into the community. And we can't live our lives alone. I mean, we can, and it's lonely and depressive, but at the end of the day, it's not worth it. You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
something's or someone's going to come find you, and that's so sad. It's so sad to hear on the news, oh, the lady was found after 2 weeks in her apartment or because of a stench or her dog was eating her. And I'm just like, this is not how we should live our lives, so alone and so secluded that people are unaware of them even dying. And it's so sad. I know I keep on going on a tangent. I'm so sorry. But ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to know more about Penny and all that she has to offer the world, because how could you not with this interesting conversation? Please check her out. I have her photo on my website. Just bloop, just right there. Just click right under and hold on. I have access to all that she has to offer on her website so that you can continue on thinking. So with that being said, bye.